My name is Christina Kovacs, and this is The Chaos Inside. Well, thank you everyone for joining us at The Chaos Inside. And today's guest that we have on our show is Anastazia Schmid, and she is one of my favorite people. And Anna and I were actually incarcerated together at the Indiana Women's Prison, and she helped me a lot throughout my journey. And so today I asked her if she would come and join us and kind of educate us a little bit on what post-traumatic prison disorder is. It's PTPD, and a lot of people are completely unaware of this. A lot of incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people are unaware of this. So Anna, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this in your busy schedule.
Thanks, Christina. I'm happy to see you.
Good to see you. So Anna, if you could just break it down for us initially and kind of define what PTPD is. And, I'm slow, so break it down for dummies for me.
Okay, I'm going to do my best. So you just mentioned something that's really crucial. This is a problem that people are unaware of. And I think it's a problem especially that incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people are completely unaware of. In the beginning, when I started to develop this symptoms of this, I had no idea what was going on with me. I didn't have a name for it. I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know what the problem or the issue was. I do have complex PTSD, which, I was diagnosed with and I had prior to prison. So coming home, I was experiencing issues and some problems related to the PTSD. I mean, like, here was the one thing that I noticed too. I had done a ton of work inside on trauma recovery to deal with the issues that had caused the problem prior to incarceration. Here was part of the problem with that. The carceral setting is a non-normal setting. It's nothing about it matches or mirrors real life. Right. So a person like myself, and I found this is absolutely the case with a high majority of women who are incarcerated, we have trauma issues and trauma disorders prior to prison. So you're in the carceral setting, you may be in the proper arenas to try to deal with those traumas, but here's the problem. There are only so many different types of things that match what you've experienced in the outside world, which means you can still be triggered, you can still have things that happen inside that will create problems with the traumas prior, but you're not in a normal setting. So let me give you an example. For me, I had experienced some extreme traumas in cars and vehicles prior to incarceration. Well, now you're incarcerated, guess what you're not in? You're not in a vehicle, you're not in a car. So I come home and I start to find that I'm having all of these issues and problems every time I get in a vehicle as a passenger. And this had to happen over and over and over and over again before it finally occurred to me what the problem was. And when I finally made the realization, it's a day that what happens in the vehicle, although it's nowhere near what I had experienced once upon a time, the vehicle itself had moved in a way that triggered the flashback to one of the episodes of abuse that I had experienced in a car 20 years prior. And then it started making sense to me. Oh, okay, here's old stuff that was not triggering me inside because the conditions and the circumstances weren't close enough to be the same. Absolutely. So originally, I'm starting to notice that some of the issues and the problems I'm having were absolutely tied to old traumas that were now resurfacing as though they were brand new because now I'm back in a normal worldly setting and there's more things to trigger me. Right. But then I started to notice that there were other things happening with me that were not at all attached to any prior traumas before prison.
Can I pause you before you go into that real quick?
Yes, please.
I want to back up a little bit because you explored a lot of this while you were in prison.
Yes.
So can I ask you how you explored that, with whose assistance? What kind of help that you got from the prison, and like what that looked like for you, because you are one of the reasons that the show is named The Chaos Inside is not just the chaos inside the facility, but the chaos inside of ourselves. So if you could kind of elaborate on what that looked like how you're navigating this while you're in prison.
Okay, so I think for most people who have been incarcerated, there is not a whole lot of help for anything with the system itself. And whatever types of programming or assistance you're getting, you're going to have to fight for it. They're not just readily offering it. So I was a person who first and foremost had been misdiagnosed in a lot of areas, was given medications and treatments that were never going to actually help the problems I had. They only exacerbated my situations. So my journey to healing and recovery actually was kind of self-led. I mean, I hit the proverbial rock bottom, if you will, and I'm not going to get into that long drawn out story. But it was a moment when I realized the system, and I mean the system at large, and I'm talking systems prior to prison, systems inside prison, had failed, completely failed. I was not getting better. I was getting worse, and realized that if anything was going to change, I was going to have to figure something out on my own. I ended up re-enrolling in college. I was in college on the street, but had not finished a degree, decided to go back. My educational experience inside became formulated around trying to figure out the answers. What in the hell was wrong with me? How in the world did I get to this position? And now what am I going to do to fix it? Because everything that had been given to me prior was failing. It wasn't working. So, you know, I spent 3 years completing my 2 undergraduate degrees, and that really became self-exploratory. And I started to figure some things out. I started putting pieces together. I started realizing, oh, okay, here's where everybody was going wrong. This is not actually my problem at all. It's more like this, and here's why. And where did all this start? So I start mapping my own life backwards to forward, trying to figure out, where did all these issues and things come from? What were the patterns? What was I seeing in myself? I spent a considerable amount of time doing self-assessment daily, keeping these logs. What time am I sleeping? When am I getting up? When is my mood fluctuating? What happened to change my mood in that moment? Just this mapping. What am I eating? What am I drinking? What am I taking into my body? Because I was looking for patterns. Patterns daily, patterns weekly, patterns monthly, patterns yearly. And I start to see very clear things when I was really charting myself, that in such exquisite detail, really, that okay, now I'm starting to see the patterns. Now I'm starting to understand where they came from and how they developed. Now I have to figure out, what am I going to do about this? So when there were programs, or there were classes, or there were people there in whatever capacity to help, I sought those things out. And I would go and I would take what applied and use it. And if it didn't, I wouldn't. And if it was not quite meeting something, I was pretty vocal about it. Like, hey, this is all great and fine, but it's not actually addressing these issues. So somewhere in that process, I'm getting better. Other people are seeing that I'm getting better. What in the hell are you doing? How do I do it?
Right.
And, you know, in the beginning, it was sort of kind of like this informal mentorship, you know, informal talking with other women. And then I start to see a pattern with all these other women around me. The storyline becomes so similar and so much the same. And it did, you know, I came to this realization that it did not really matter what a woman's charge was and why she was there. We all had these same underlying issues in our background that had then spiraled out of control and manifested into all of these other issues.
Right.
So, you know, I I've always been an artist. I've been a pretty active person in my life. I started taking pieces and components that were part of me and part of my life, but weaving them into new things. And in new combinations and new ways of how they were going to help. And so, you're aware because you were a part of some of the groups that I led, creative writing, art, poetry, yoga, meditation, exercise, body awareness, all of these different things become part of what I'm doing and what I'm teaching other women to do, to find outlets for expression, to find release, to find safe places to, quite frankly, just talk about their shit.
Yeah.
Because you're not really safe to do that in most places in the prison, especially with prison-run programs. They can and will use it against you. So
yeah, which is very true. And I just want to kind of chime in real quick and attest to the contribution that you made to my life during the darkest time of my life. And so I observed you in your room so much, but yet you were always coming out to help other women. And that's one thing that I can say about you, Anna, is that you saw every woman, right? Like every individual, and you did do everything that you can to help them navigate that journey that they were embarking on. And the classes that I did with you, you did lead yoga. I mean, you were just a leading force in the community, and you did a lot, and a lot of it was more beneficial coming from a peer than it was a taught group, right? Like with somebody viewing themselves as superior talking down to you versus having that connection and somebody that can really relate to what I was experiencing and going through. So I just kind of wanted to add that in there because I don't know if you know how important you are to some people. So it's very much appreciated. And go ahead with your story.
Well, I think you just touched on something that really is valid. I like to tell people I'm the been there, done that club.
Yeah.
I've been through the shit. I've been in the trenches, and that's what I realized too. Part of the reason why I was unable to fully grasp help from outside sources was I'm dealing with people that only understood these things from a textbook level.
Right.
Or maybe working with other people that had it, but they had no firsthand experience. They couldn't make the ties. They made false assumptions. They put things together that really didn't match. They never asked the right questions. They didn't really know how to get me to get to the heart of what in the hell was really going on with me. There was just such a disconnect there because they had no direct experience.
Absolutely.
And so I found that was crucial and that was key with me being able to help other people. And here's what I had realized, Christina. I had to do this and figure this shit out pretty much on my own, hanging off the edge of a cliff, and it was like, no human being should have to do that. The system, not only in its failure, also becomes very violent and very traumatic itself, which was absolutely the case for me. I had experienced a lot of systemic abuse and systemic trauma. So when the people that are supposed to be the helpers and the healers and the protectors are the very people that are inflicting harm upon you, you don't trust those people. You're not going to those people for help. They've made the problem worse, not better. Which is part of the reason too why I had to learn to figure this out and navigate it myself, because there was no way I was going to subject myself to people who were going to do any number of ungodly things to me on top of what had already happened. Right. And so I think, here's the part of talking about post-traumatic prison disorder. It's these systemic violations, it's the systemic traumas, the systemic violence that starts to create this problem. But here's the thing I really want to hit on. Most people look at this and they think of the biggest, the ugliest, the scariest. They think of literal physical violence. They think of sexual violence. They think of very bodily, hands-on type things.
Right.
Now, that's very much true in a lot of cases, way more than what people are aware of. Women are indeed being assaulted on the inside. More often than not, assaulted by people who work there, not being assaulted by their peers inside. Although that does happen, in my experience of almost 19 years, it was few and far between that I witnessed one woman attacking another woman in a physical sense. But I saw it happen a lot on the other side of the equation.
Right.
And so, that's something that isn't being addressed either. I mean, there is this huge cover up of trying to pretend like these assaults aren't happening. There's no real accountability for the people who are doing it. They're acting with impunity pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's what happens. Whether there has been direct physical or sexual violence or not, the imminent threat is there for a woman constantly, daily. There's never a moment that you're unaware of the fact that these people literally hold your life in their hands, and this quick, they can destroy your whole world.
Absolutely.
They can make up a story that never happened. They're the person in position of authority. They will be the one believed. You will be the one in trouble. And so, this is what I had found with women over the years who ended up acquiescing to sexual advances of staff members was all out fear. It's not that they really wanted to be doing these things, but if they didn't go along with what was happening, there would be write-ups, there would be solitary confinement, there would be loss of programming, there would be loss of visits with their children and contacts with the outside world. These people hold this much power over you in your life. You end up living in this state of constant hypervigilance.
Right.
Is somebody coming? What are they going to do? What's going to happen? And for many of us, we learned the hard way. I didn't have to actually be doing anything wrong. I just had to have that one officer that for whatever reason didn't like me, had it out for me, whatever. And you would end up with some ridiculous write-up and all these problems that followed it. And they knew that.
The case with where we were at the chow hall, and the captain at the time had claimed that a woman had given him a dirty look, sent her to lock, and she ended up committing suicide. And that's an extreme case, but an example nonetheless, right? So, look, I may have not even been looking at you. I may have been looking past you, but because you thought I gave you a dirty look, you put me in handcuffs, you sent me to lock it, and yes, she did. She ended up committing suicide.
Right. So you're saying on one hand, it's an extreme case, and in the fact that this woman did indeed take her life, yes, that's an extreme case. But part of what I'm trying to get people to understand with this talk today is that here is a human being that I would lay my hand down on anything to swear this is a human being suffering from post-traumatic prison disorder. You're experiencing it while you're still in the inside. For many of us, we don't necessarily notice the effects of this until we've come home. But it's these daily, day in and day out, chipping away at the mind, the body, and the spirit of the people inside. There is such levels of degradation, deprivation, and dehumanization that's happening every day. I mean, even in the quote unquote nicest of prisons with the most programs and all this other crap, it's the little things. And this is what I finally came to understand after I came home and started having all these weird issues that I couldn't explain, like what in the hell was going on. But again, when you eventually start to unwrap it and try to untangle it and make sense of it, I think about things like routine pat downs, routine strip searches that maybe in and of themselves were not of a violent nature, but they are a violation nonetheless. Nonetheless, when the only human contact you are allowed to have physically is somebody putting their hands all over your body to check for security, when the only time there's anything that anybody in the world would even try to construe as being intimate is you being completely naked, bent over in front of a human being that you do not want looking at your body.
Right.
It starts to take a toll. Mm-hmm. So the more time a person's been inside, the more time they have been subjected to the only real bodily contacts or things are very invasive and not wanted. That's taking a psychological toll. Even if you don't understand it in the moment it's happening, over time, over and over and over again, that takes a toll. The bigger thing I want to touch on is something that I've now realized I developed from all those years inside. And I'd never even heard anybody talk about this before. Even in all my work with PTSD, I don't think anybody really hit on this. There is such a thing as emotional trauma. And here's what I find as women we are really experiencing inside is this emotional trauma. And I'm going to talk about one of the biggest ones for most women. The majority of women inside have children. So you are torn away from your children in this process. Some women, they don't get to see their kids at all when they're inside. Other women, it's very, very little, very minimal contact. The severance of mother from child is an emotional, soul-killing devastation. To spend day in and day out worried about, oh my God, what's happening with my babies? Where are my babies? I can't reach them. For me, I spent probably the first 3 years of incarceration having nightmares almost nightly, hearing my daughter scream for me and scream my name, and I could not reach her. So there would be days I would wake up so panicked, trying to call home, thinking, oh my God, what's wrong? Something's wrong. Something's wrong. And then the number of times nobody answered the phone. And so here you are in this state of panic and in your mind thinking, is something really wrong or not? But I cannot reach these people. So children notwithstanding, the number of times we are in any type of state, God forbid, a crisis of some sort, and you are desperately trying to reach out to reach someone in the outside world and you cannot reach them for whatever reason. The phone calls that go unanswered, sometimes for days or weeks. You have no idea what's going on with people in the outside world. They have no idea what's going on with you. And maybe it's nothing. It could even be a time where things are completely innocent, like this had happened to me several times. A family member would schedule that they were coming to visit. So visits in prison almost become ritualistic. I mean, it's a big deal. You take extra time getting ready. You want to look as good as you can, especially if you got kids coming. You want them to see you as put together as humanly possible so they don't worry anymore. So you take all this time and effort preparing for this. Plus there's the excitement of, yes, I get to see my family and loved ones. And oh my goodness, this is the only damn time I am legal to hold another human being's hand or put my arms around somebody and have a hug. And that takes a toll too. Remind me to get back to that. But, and then for whatever reason, you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting and the visit doesn't show up. And eventually you go to the phone and you're calling because what's happened? So it's this state of unknown. Did something horrible happen? Did they get in an accident? Where are these people at? And so your mind starts this rat race of possibility of why they have not shown up. Maybe, if you're lucky, you'll get a response from somebody that day. And maybe they'll tell you it was absolutely nothing. Something else just came up. Or on the flip side of the coin, and this had happened to me too, something really bad actually did happen. And so all of your worst fears are reinforced then. But what I'm saying is, regardless of the circumstances behind why a person does not show up or why a person does not answer a phone call is irrelevant. It's the point of what it does to you psychologically and emotionally in the process of this happening, and especially in a process of it happening over and over and over and over again. So it doesn't start to hit me and make sense to me until I'm at home. And, you know, we all have this damn phone now. You got a phone attached to your hand practically. You're theoretically, you can reach anybody just like that. And I would go to make a call to somebody and I wouldn't get an answer. And I would find myself in this extreme state of panic that made absolutely no good sense. Why am I freaking out like this? You'd text message somebody and it's cold. You don't hear anything for a while. And I'm panicked and I'm hyperventilating and I'm becoming very emotional and I can't understand what the problem is. And eventually somebody calls me back or I finally get a hold of them and I'm freaking out. They're like, the hell is your problem? I mean, nothing's going on. But it's happening over and over and over again until I start to make the connection. Well, no wonder. Almost 19 years of repeatedly going through this story and these scenarios with people when something either was or was not actually happening, but nonetheless, you had become emotionally charged in those moments, upset in those moments, fearful in those moments. And here it was playing out day in and day out in the outside world where nothing's wrong and nothing's going on. The other thing I noticed was I would get these moments of sheer panic, fear, sometimes bordering on terror, where I felt like any minute something catastrophic is going to happen. Any minute I'm going to lose everything I have. Any minute somebody I love is going to disappear. And there was nothing happening in regular life to be causing me to have these feelings. And then I start thinking again, well, let's look at the patterns inside the prison. Here's what I come to tell people now. Prison is a constant state of grief and loss, a constant state, whether you're recognizing it as such or not. Because here's the thing, at a moment's notice, anything you have, anything you're doing, any person you've become close to in any capacity, bam, they can take it just like that for any reason or no reason at all. So over and over and over again, there is the ripping and the tearing away of any shred of anything that has any meaning to you on the inside. And here's what people, for crazy reasons, we really are expected to be non-human when we're inside. We are expected not to develop bonds, not to develop relationships, not to give a shit about any other human being. Newsflash, we're humans. I don't give a damn what circumstance you put us in, that's going to happen. Humans are communal creatures by nature. We are going to gravitate to other people on some level. So when you have formed a relationship of whatever sort and bond with another human being in there, and then either today they decide they're going to move that person to the other side of the prison, or they're going to move them to a whole different prison, or people go home, they get released. God forbid it happened, especially in 18 and a half years, somebody's died for real in the prison. You're constantly being ripped away from any human being that you develop any kind of a connection with. And that's actually one of the things that were really policed inside, in my experience. Don't let them see you actually get close to somebody. Right. Because if they see you getting too close, they're going to rip you apart on purpose. Mm-hmm. So, then there becomes this whole level of you almost have to hide the fact that you have a connection and a bond with another human being, regardless of what that actually looks like. Everything becomes misconstrued as sex or sexual, whether it is or not. We've spent 200 years hypersexualizing the female criminal. Acts that don't have anything to do with sex suddenly become sex. Mm-hmm. I was sent to solitary confinement for 75 days for a woman touching a bracelet on my hand. And there's a problem too. When we criminalize normal, innocent, everyday human behavior to the nth degree, you really are trying to turn somebody into the quote unquote monster you want the rest of the world to think they are.
It's true. That's true. Shaping and molding you and
yes.
Yeah.
And I have to be fearful that if another human being, God forbid, accidentally brushes my hand or touches me in any fashion, or I have touched somebody else in any fashion, that I'm going to be locked in a room all alone. I'm going to lose whatever the hell I've been doing. I'm not going to be allowed to see my family.
Mm-hmm.
You might take time from me. I may actually be spending more time in prison because of this.
Right.
At one point in time, I had lost 120 days of good time, meaning you will spend 120 additional days in prison because a woman kissed my cheek. 120 days. Let's break this down. What essentially just happened is that for a very normal, very legal action that lasted this much time, you have just sentenced me to 4 additional months in prison for that. In the state of Indiana, it's costing those taxpayers no less than $65 a day to house me.
Wow.
So the taxpayers just spent over $6,000 to keep me in prison for somebody giving me a kiss on my cheek. What type of message, though, is that sending to a human being on a psychological, spiritual, and emotional level?
Right.
When normal, everyday things are that highly criminalized,
Right.
what is that really doing? And so here's another thing. You come home and people want to hug you. People want to touch you. God forbid anybody wants to do anything any more intimate than that. And here it comes. Here comes the panic. Automatically. Oh my goodness, who's watching? What's going to happen? What's going to happen to me? And there it goes. The whole race again.
Right. And that's first of all, I think that's a very good point that you bring up, is that the behaviors that they're implementing in a prison would be classified as a sociopath outside, right?
Right.
And but I think that the intimacy point is very, very deep, right? Like, and not even talking about an intimate partner, which is very much relevant, very, very much relevant. But, like, so I know that my intimacy level has shifted dramatically. I was like this just big touchy feely person, loved to cuddle, and I'm not talking to complete strangers. I'm talking like my kids and my loved ones. And, there's times where it's even difficult to say this, because if you haven't been through what we've been through, then you can't understand. And it's very demoralizing as a parent when it feels awkward to cuddle with your child.
Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about, Christina. When you are criminalized and punished and repeatedly put through grief and loss for losing any form of a bond or relationship, when you are punished and criminalized for normal human activity over and over and over and over again, suddenly there's a wall. You come out, you're afraid to get close to anybody because, oh my God, at any second they're going to be taken from me. You are always, like I say now, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Any second, I'm going to lose the people I love. I cannot get too close to you because if I do, something bad will happen.
Well, and I want to point out,
that,
like, it's this, where the conclusions that you have drawn are, they floor me, because this isn't taking place in a conscious mind, right? Like this is taking place in the back of a subconscious mind.
Yes.
And, so it does help make sense, reason why we feel a lot of the ways that we do feel. It doesn't make it feel any better, but it's I think that, like, it answers so many questions of of the different emotions. So when we did a survey on what are the reentry issues, the number one leading response was anxiety. And you know, between anxiety and all
nobody knows why they have it. Most people have no idea why they're so anxious and
not
uptight.
a clue. Not a clue. And you know, I think that like sensory deprivation, that's been identified. You know, and the obvious things we can point out, but I think that it's not just anxiety, but we're feeling all of these other emotions that we're having a difficult time even labeling, but even more of a difficult time trying to figure out why in the hell am I feeling the way that I'm feeling. And I think that this post-traumatic prison disorder explains so much of that.
So here's what really started to do it for me. When I start really noticing something is definitely wrong and is going on above and beyond any other problem, disorder, or issue I had previously had identified and worked on, was when I'm having all of these things happen day in and day out, and I can't quite figure them out. And then I'm sitting there and I'm thinking one day, you know, this is really fucked up, because in theory, I could be the damn poster child for quote unquote rehabilitation. The person who had literally done every single thing humanly imaginable and in their power to work on their shit and get right on the inside. Mm-hmm. I had taken every program to the point that I was creating programs. I had taken every form of education and utilized that to its maximum potential for the betterment of myself and my life. I had developed an impeccable support network on the inside. I had picked up every coping skill, every tool, everything there was.
Right.
Because I had laid such a solid foundation inside, I was walking out into a world where I had support, where there would be people there to make sure that my basic needs were met, that I would have the things I needed to have. I was the success story inside, and the entire path had been laid out for me to be a success on the outside. And yet here I was experiencing all this shit I couldn't explain. And I start thinking, oh my God, if me, the poster child of rehabilitation with all this damn support and all this great shit happening for them is going through this, what in the hell is going on with the people I did time with that did not do everything I did on the inside, that did not achieve what I had achieved, that did not have the support network I had, that did not have the resources and the connections that I had to be okay in my life on the inside or on the outside. Mm-hmm. And things had gotten so
right?
Yeah, so dark and so low, and I become so desperate of something's got to give, man. Something has got to give. What in the hell is wrong? And so when I finally hit once again what I like to call the proverbial rock bottom, I do one thing that I learned was absolutely imperative in anybody's healing and recovery from anything. I had to start reaching out to another human being. It had become too big for me to deal with on my own, and people were not understanding what I was trying to articulate. And let me get here. I have indeed been in formal professional therapy since I've been home, and I got a great therapist. I'm not complaining there. But as I was even trying to explain those things there, they weren't getting it. They weren't getting it. They weren't understanding. They were trying to undermine and justify and put things on top of it that no, this doesn't match. So I started reaching out to some of the women that I had done a lot of time with. And I started explaining a lot of these things that I was experiencing. But at that time, you know, I couldn't fully articulate like I can now. Oh, here's the match. This is why this is happening now, because this is how many times it happened then. I was just talking about my day in and day out feelings.
Right.
And how all of these things were causing all of these problems to me, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And here's what happened, Christina. One woman after another, because I started going right down the line. Oh my God, Anna, I feel it too. Oh my goodness, it's exactly what happens to me. I never understood that this is what was going on until you just said that.
Right.
One woman had told me that her relationship with her child was so strained now on the outside, and they had a good connection inside. Because every time her boy would go to leave the house, she would freak out. She's calling his phone a whole bunch of times, and he's like, dude, you're overbearing. It's too much. You know,
Right.
she's like, but I didn't really understand until you started talking and saying what you're going through. I was terrified for 10 years inside that what the hell was going on with my kid. I'm home now. I'm looking at him. I'm seeing him. I'm dealing with him every day. He's fine. But in my mind and in my emotions and in my heart, I still feel like something ain't right.
Right.
And I'm taking it out on him, and he thinks I'm over the top, and we're freaking out, and it's this back and forth, and it's creating more problems. She's like, now it's making sense. And so through all these conversations I began having with all these other women who were now outside, and might I add, several of them who, again, did everything they could do inside to be okay, had the support systems, had all the things you're supposed to have, and we're all having the problems too.
Right.
And I almost found out that for some of us, that too became part of the problem. We were doing so good and so amazing, and we got the whole damn world laid out in front of you to do even better now. The pressure of that alone. You're the trailblazer now.
Right.
Oh my goodness, you better not fail. You can't fail.
Right.
You can't have a problem. You can't have anything going wrong with you. You're the one that's got it all together. You're the one helping everybody else.
If you can't make it, then
But nobody's going to make it.
Yeah.
Fuck, we rely on you to make it. What do you mean you can't make it? And
Yeah.
so here's what had happened for a long time too, because I was one of those people. For a moment, there's that self-silencing. There's a feeling of shame. There's a feeling of guilt. There's this feeling of failure, like, dude, I did everything, and here I am again in this position.
Right.
What's that going to look like if you start admitting you're having all these issues? You know, but it came through finally, fearlessly, openly talking with other women who I knew. You have been there. Nobody in the outside world who had experienced this could get why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And here's what I then began to find too. Not only did all of us have the same exact things going on with us and issues and problems, but I found that this became the number one reason why any number of crazy shit would happen. And a lot of those crazy events are the very things that were leading people right back to prison. It was the number one reason for a relapse. It was the number one reason for a suicide attempt or an actual suicide. It was the number one reason for failures in employment, for failures in education. It was the number one reason for disillusions and breakdowns between relationships, be it family relationships, intimate relationships, friendships, co-worker relationships. It was the number one reason behind every single thing that could go wrong that eventually caused a woman to go back to prison.
Damn.
And I had one moment of such supreme guilt and shame over that, because I did 18 and a half years straight. And in 18 and a half years, I watched woman after woman get out and come back, and get out and come back, and get out and come back. And I was another one of those damn fools that believed the system's rhetoric of they didn't just try hard enough. They didn't want it. They don't know how to act right. They don't want to be right. They're lazy. They wouldn't work. They would blow, whatever that damn story is they're telling.
If they would have just given me that chance, then I wouldn't have come back. And
right. Yes. Yes. And suddenly I sat here and I said, oh my God, shame on me for number one, ever believing that lie. But two, for not being able to see it for what it was and have a deeper understanding of this. There is something that has been very deeply damaging inside a human being that has done time in these places. And the more time you've done, And the more times you come in and out, the worse it's become. And nobody's addressing it. And there is nothing in play that is preparing anybody to deal with any of this.
Right.
And know where you're going.
Major problem, right? And Anna, I just want to say that, you know, just as we say that nobody that has, if you have not been through what we've been through, then you can't understand what we are going through, right? And so, you know, I too am guilty of that. Like, this is the 7th time she's been in prison. I don't understand it. Like, if, you know, give me that one chance. And, you know, by the grace of God, I've been able to stay out, but it's not because I'm better than she is. It's just because I've had different resources or different opportunities than others. But, you know, we couldn't understand something that we hadn't been through either.
Right.
And now that we are, you know, and we can understand, and we have been through it, that, you know, we fight for it, right? We educate people on it. We try to redeem ourselves, you know, and by taking the right stance now. So you can't shame yourself for having that guilt, but I can, what I'm saying is I can relate too.
Yeah, you get it. But let me say this too. When I'm saying that I have resources and I have a support network and I have help with basic needs in the outside world, I need to make it very clear that not a single thing in any one of those categories has come from help from the state. Not one.
Right.
I could not get so much as a free bus pass when I got out over almost 19 years from the state or any state entity. I was denied public assistance. I was given food stamps for a hot minute, and they immediately pulled them away from me because they said, "Oh, we're sorry. You're a college student full-time. You don't qualify for that." So here I am doing one of the things that you claim I should be doing to better my life.
Right.
And now I'm being penalized for doing the right fucking thing. You're not giving me any assistance because I'm doing the right thing. So money to live on, school, basic needs, transportation, all of the things that we just need for basic everyday life, for me, has come from people that are not tied to, connected to, or working for the system in any way, shape, or form. All of those needs have been met by people outside of the system, outside of the programs of the system. I even went to one of those reentry classes when I got out, Christina. And I'm going to leave it nameless. I could put them on blast right now, but I'm not going to. I go to this place and I tell them, here are my needs. I am a full-time college student. I walked out the door and literally 4 hours later was in a college classroom. I mean, full-time graduate student, this is my job. So I walk out and I explain to them, listen, I'm a full-time college student. This is what I do. Here's what I need help with. I need help with transportation. I need, you know, grocery assistance or whatever. Did I receive any of those things? Absolutely not. What they expected me to do instead was go spend 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday, in a building on the opposite side of Indianapolis, a 20-minute drive from where I was at. Now, mind you, at this point in time, I don't have a driver's license. I don't have a car. You will not give me a damn bus ticket to even get here. But you want me to come to this office 20 minutes away from where I live, figure out how the fuck you're getting there on your own because we're not helping you. Right. And you better come every day or you're getting cut off or whatever if you don't, to sit in a class to be taught how to write a resume. Excuse me, I have a resume. I don't need a resume. Aren't you listening to what I'm trying to tell you here? No. So you want me to do something that's impossible for me to do. One, because I cannot get there. Two, because you expected to eat up so many hours of my day when I have to be in class and studying and doing things. And three, you're not actually providing me anything that I actually need for what my particular issues are. So what was that supposed to do? Oh, then they wanted me to take drug and alcohol classes too. That's not my issue. That wasn't my problem. My counselor that I see did not come through the system. I had to find her on my own through a battered women's shelter. Nothing that I needed had come through the system.
Right.
And still doesn't. So again, if you do not have those support networks in place and resources outside of the system to help you, you're going to fail right there too.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's definitely not a system set up for success, that by far. And and we, the reentry show has talked about that a lot, because it doesn't, but I think that another big point was that we talked about in the reentry show was the preparation. You can't prepare yourself. They can't fully prepare you for what you're going to experience, even if they helped with like the materialistic things or, they could do a much better job. But I think that you provided a huge key that people need to know about. And I think that education on this topic is crucial for people that are out, but also the people that are haven't experienced it in a its full force, I should say. I think that more people need to be having this conversation.
So let me make one very key important point too. After talking to all these other women, figuring out, number one, we all have the same problem. Number two, it's all coming from the same places. Now we have kind of a baseline understanding of why this is happening. And here's what's been crucial in this. It's been staying connected to other women that I've done time with, that we help each other navigate through this day in, day out crap of what we're experiencing that you can't even really explain why it's happening when it's happening. But as I started doing more and more research and talking to more and more women about this, I'm on a gazillion different listservs because, I work with so many different organizations nationwide. And one of those listservs one day pops up some woman and just kind of this random link. And for whatever reason, I decide to click on it. And it is a survey about post-traumatic prison disorder. Now, as I'm reading through the questions, I'm like, dude, this is it. This is it. Oh my God, somebody gave this a name. What? Gotta find her. So the lady that I must give credit to for coining this term, as far as I'm aware, is Shawana Vaughn. She is a dynamic human being. She lives in New York. She's the founder of an organization called Silent Cry, Inc. And I now work very closely with Shawana and her mission to make this a known, recognizable, and compensated and treated disorder. She is drafting a bill. She's in New York. She's drafting a bill, getting some Congress people and legislators on her team to understand and recognize this and do something about it. So for anyone who's listening, who is looking for additional support and resources on this, please reach out to Silent Cry, Inc. and get in touch with Shawana and listen to the talks, engage in the dialogue and the meetings on this. Because the more people we have that can start to come forward with their own stories and how this is affecting them, the more we can collectively work together to make real change to do something about it.
Absolutely.
So I had to go there for a minute, but
no,
I
appreciate it. Anna, I would like to include the link to that organization, and any information that you have, we can also include that, so that people can access it. We're running out of time here, but Anna, you have been so informative and educational on this topic, and I applaud all of your advocacy efforts and the support, and again, just so grateful to have you in my circle. Is there anything else is there an action that people can take if people are hearing this and they want to help support it? Is there an action?
Okay, like I said, I think first and foremost, what I have found now is absolutely imperative is that we must remain tied to one another. We
Yes.
must have that support of the been there, done that club.
Mm-hmm.
We got to have each other, and we have to be able to fearlessly speak with one another about, hey, this is the problem I'm having, and this is why I'm having it.
Right.
And then if and when it has become so overwhelming that we have fallen in some capacity or another, because I have dealt with person after person with relapses and all kinds of other issues. We have to be there for one another to say, it is okay. We are not going to downgrade you for this. We're going to help you work through it. We're going to help you get past it.
Absolutely.
We're going to help pick each other back up. There's no room to be tearing each other down for somebody that fell that far. It can happen. It does happen. It happens to some of the best of us.
Right.
You know, it's about having that support and that understanding community and network. And I think, you know, that's part of what we need to work to create is a more formal space for that. We're doing it informally with each other, hoping we can catch one another, you know, in the process of things. But we need to have these forums where we can actually come together on purpose regularly.
Yeah.
To sit down and work through the crap together, just like we were doing on the inside. We need to now have that on the outside. Right. All of those things that we had developed and we were working through together, we need to figure out how do we come back together and do that again out here.
And maybe
because
we
are our biggest supporters
within the post-incarcerated women's group. And if anyone is interested and you have been incarcerated, there is a post-incarcerated women's group. I apologize that it's only for the women. I only feel that that's right, me being a woman. I highly encourage any for a gentleman to take that on and create a post-incarcerated men's group, because the women's group, we are able to kind of talk about these issues more. But Anna, I think that we should continue this conversation on there as well, maybe going live, and because I don't think that a lot of people know about it, and we do need to provide that support. And I totally,
think, you know, even when you had it yourself, you didn't know what the hell to call it, and you think you're the only person going through it. So I mean, you know, this has been now over a year's process for me to try to understand it, articulate it, figure it out, get baseline. I mean, I've been working on this now for a long time to even be able to come to a point that I can try to talk about it and articulate it as best I can. And I've just scratched the surface today.
Right.
And I have just scratched the surface with the many different ways that we're affected, why we're affected, what happens because of it. You know, so yes, this has to be an ongoing dialogue.
Yes.
We have to openly, honestly, and fearlessly be exploring these things, not only with ourselves, but with each other. And we have to be letting the rest of the world know, hey, you don't have a damn thing in place to deal with this or assist with this or help with this. And this is the number one cause of why people aren't making it.
Absolutely.
This is it right here. This is what's sitting at the bottom of whatever else happened. Right. This is it. So we got to call it out.
Well, thank you so much, Anna. I appreciate you joining us, and we definitely hope to have you back again on the show, because you've got a lot of experience and you've got a lot to offer. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you again.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.